Do you think there's a link between the rise of behavioral disorders in children and the changes in society, or is it just a case that we are now more aware?
Oh,
Most of it is because we're aware of the symptoms. So now that we can actually diagnose these people, yeah, the cases are going to rise. It's like with autism. We know what autism is, the symptoms, the signs, and now we can diagnose people with autism and get them help. Same with like Tourette syndrome. Before people knew what Tourette syndrome was, it was just considered demon possession. But after, studies of people with Tourette syndrome, it was found out, oh, this is actually like a neurological problem and it's not demon possession.
oh no, no, we're definitely destabilizing kids. There's no doubt about that. Women too. Women are way more unhappy than they were 30 years ago. There's a huge body of epidemiological data on depression and anxiety among women. And women are far more unhappy than they were in the early 1960s.
Okay, yeah, I highly doubt that they're more unhappy. I mean, women were way unhappy back then when they weren't allowed to, have a checking account or have a job or, do much outside of the home besides, be controlled by a man. And why isn't Peterson saying anything about like men destabilizing children by, being abusive, being emotionally distant, um, not really caring for the kids except, a few interactions.
And there's all sorts of reasons for that. And children, well, all we do to our children, pretty much of what we do to our children is confuse them in relationship to their identity, and even in relationship to what identity is. We tell our children, and we're compelled to tell them this now, well, your identity is just what you feel you are at this moment. It's like,
I think it's funny the guy talking about confusing children is the same person who will tell kids that there's some kind of invisible magic sky fairy in the sky that judges them, and if they do something bad, they're going to go to some magical torture land.
well, what do you mean by feel? Exactly. Well, we really haven't thought that through because all we're doing is feeling. And
Well, yeah, Jordan Peterson, the guy that thinks lust and anger and all these other emotions and feelings are demons, would be against people talking about how they feel.
and what do you mean by at this moment? Do you mean like this tenth of a second? Do you mean this minute? Well, we're not really being that precise. You see, yeah, that's for sure. You're not being that precise. And where did you get this idiot idea that identity has ever been subjectively defined? Try defining your identity subjectively with your wife.
Yeah, identity is subjective. Um, it's not just an objective like idea that a person is just one way or one thing all the time. You know, you can be.
And see how well that goes. Can you just imagine? That's the argument. What I feel goes, woman. It's like, oh, that's going to work out well. It's like no resistance is going to make itself manifest on that front. I mean, all you're doing when you're married is negotiating your mutual identities. You're just doing that nonstop. And you either do that well, in which case you kind of understand each other and maybe you're both improving, or you do it badly, in which case, you're at odds consistently and you can't exist together harmoniously. But all social relations are negotiations about identity, and the idea.
Yeah, I mean, if you identify as a Christian and then you decide to identify as a Muslim or vice versa, well, you're changing your identity. And what's the issue with that?
Idea that any given individual has the right or the opportunity to insist that their momentary subjectivity dominate the social landscape is It's so preposterous, I really can't believe that we've accepted it. So,
But we're supposed to accept your identity as a Christian that is forced upon everybody else in the United States. Why is that acceptable?
so I know technically, for example, that attitude literally characterizes misbehaving 2-year-olds. That's the fundamental existential claim of a misbehaving 2-year-old is, what I feel now goes. And you might say, well, why doesn't it? And the answer is, well, how long is a 2-year-old going to last if you just like bring him to the airport and leave him there? He's not capable of orienting himself across any reasonable span of time
Well, yeah, obviously, 2-year-olds can't, navigate, various environments because they don't have that capability.
in a multitude of different situations. He hasn't got the maturity. He hasn't got the integration. He's got this reliance on an impulsive hedonism. And that does characterize 2-year-olds, by the way, because they're not able to engage in social play, not at 2. That doesn't really kick in till about the age of 3. And at 3, if you're not fixated at the level of a 2-year-old, then all you do is negotiate your identity. And even if you're a 3-year-old kid and you're trying to play with another kid, you say, here's how you do it. Do you want to play? You don't say, you have to play with me because I want you to. It's like, you'll make 0 friends with that approach. The kids will just abandon you and leave you in your isolation. And that's what happens to kids who make those tyrannical claims.
This is funny. He's obviously describing himself stuck in 2-year-old mode where he is trying to tell everybody that they have to be a certain way, which is, cisgendered, non-trans, because anytime he talks to trans people, he tries to tell them that, no, they're not trans. You have to be the way that I've decided.
You have to invite people to play. That's the hallmark of the play that leads to the development of social ability itself. And so the invitation is, do you want to play? And then the answer has to be yes, it has to be voluntarily given. And then the next question is, well, what would you like to play? And what that means is, it means this technically. What identity would you want to experiment with me, for the next span of time? That's what children are doing when they engage in pretend play. So maybe the boy asks the girl, would you like to play house? And the girl says yes or not. And if not, well, then it's up to her to offer a different game. No, I'd rather play tag. It's like, okay, we need to agree. And then we're going to assign roles. We're going to play tag, you're it. No, I want you to be it. Okay, I'm it, but then you'll be it if I tag you. It's like, okay, your terms are acceptable to me. And so then in tag, one child plays pursuer, and the other child plays the pursued. And then they flip roles, and they experiment with those identities. And if they're playing house, the boy maybe plays out the father or the cat, who knows?
Yeah. And this is how kids grow and learn. It's how they learn to it's how they figure out what they like, what they don't like, by pretend play and dealing with and taking on different types of identities. And there is nothing wrong if somebody decides, hey, the perception I have of this body is not the identity that I'm wanting to go with. But for Jordan Peterson and other right-wingers, if you don't identify with what your body is perceived at, it is somehow bad.
And the girl plays out the mother, and that's an experimentation with identity. And it's not only that the boy adopts the role of father and the girl adopts the role of mother, let's say, it's that they jointly adopt those roles dynamically in a way that supports the other's play and makes the whole game fun. It's very, very complicated and very sophisticated, as you know, because you have to play that game all the time with your wife or husband at home. And it's very difficult. And so
I mean, no, technically, I mean, I don't know. I've never played, a game with my SO, pretending to be somebody that I wasn't. Is this what Jordan's saying that he does with his wife?
so to adopt those roles, husband and wife, and to do that in a spirit of voluntary participation and play. It's a sign of mastery to manage that. And all of that's reflected in the behavior of children. And all of that's a consequence, by the time they're 3, of their willingness and ability to engage in the social negotiation of their identity.
Internet service providers operate like monopolies in the
And now we tell children, no, you're just who you think you're just who you feel you are this moment. And if you feel that you're in the wrong body, I saw this horrible thing today. This animated cartoon, Mama has a mustache. And
See, it's all about his feelings. He doesn't feel like people should be able to dictate if they're in the wrong body or not, because it's all about how he feels about other people in society.
it was made by Lupron, or sponsored by Lupron. That's the company that makes the chemical that chemically castrates convicted sex criminals and blocks puberty for gender dysphoric children.
Yeah, hormone therapy can be, or various hormones can be used to, chemically castrate people, block puberty, start puberty, and various other things. Like some pregnant women use it during pregnancy. So he's bringing up that it is used to chemically castrate people to scare people into thinking that's going to happen to kids, that they're being chemically castrated, when that is not the case.
And the whole ad had, giggling, happy children in the background, which is so sinful that it's almost beyond comprehension. And these were little kids' voices that were being used, I don't think more than 4 or 5 years old, celebrating their dissociation from biological reality, sponsored by a pharmaceutical company that manufactures castrating chemicals. It's like, Jesus, what the hell?
Again, hormone therapy can be used for different things, be it, it can be used to block puberty if people are going through early puberty. It can be used to jumpstart puberty if people are having late puberty starts, or, testosterone has been given to kids to help their growth. There's been various hormones given to pregnant women to help them with their pregnancy, or to help fight against cancer. So to act like these hormones are just used for chemical castration or gender affirming care is just a lie made up. It's just a lie by Jordan Peterson, so that he can fearmonger his audience into thinking that's the only two things that these are being used for.
It's really something to behold. It's like, are we making our children's mental health worse? Yeah, we certainly are. Why do you think there's a psychological epidemic of gender dysphoria?
Right. But telling kids, hey, if you don't obey these made-up rules by this fictional being created by people a couple thousand years ago in this Bible, that you're going to go to hell, you think that doesn't cause some kind of mental strain on kids? It is. He pretends to care about like the mental health of kids, while also supporting a very abusive religious ideology where, kids are told that they're being tortured or that they're bad if they don't act or behave in a certain way according to some kind of fictional character.
That's pretty bloody obvious. And then that's not all. We tell our children that the entire human endeavor especially if it's associated with ambition and vision and goal, is doing nothing but contributing to the apocalyptic and immediate demise of the planet. And for all
No, we're just being told that, certain certain actions and certain behaviors, yeah, does contribute to negative effects to the environment, and then there are good things that you can do that will, contribute positive effects to the environment. And again, Jordan Peterson is a highly religious right winger who, yeah, believes in the apocalypse of the Bible. They People like him want the apocalypse to happen, but hey, when you're talking about trans kids and stuff like that, you gotta pretend that the apocalypse is bad.
all the children who manage to escape that particular moral trap, especially the boys, we tell them that, well, if you have any leftover ambition after scrubbing out the guilt about being a planetary destructive force, then just remember that everything you do that's even remotely masculine is associated with patriarchal oppression.
Okay, let's define what is considered masculine, what is considered feminine, because that again is a social construct. It's like saying that like compassion is masculine, while love for kids is feminine, when that is not the case. That's just something that we've assigned those actions and behaviors.
And so, Jesus, dismal. It's so sickeningly untrue. So, a long while back, about 10 years now, I worked on a committee. It was a UN committee, as a matter of fact, that was focused on something like the investigation into what might constitute sustainable economic development. I had my qualms about that, but forget about that for a moment.
What, you don't like sustainable economics? That's not too surprising there.
I did a lot of research for about 2 years, reading everything I could get my hands on the relationship between economic development and environmental degradation. Because there is environmental degradation. We've done a very stupid job, for example, of fishing out the oceans, and amazingly blind and foolish. There are things.
Well, that seems to be a problem of capitalism more than anything, because all that is due to wanting to make as much of a profit as possible. That's like when they started fishing the very deep oceans for various unique fishes. And then, since there was a great demand for it, they did a lot of fishing, but once the demand dwindled, they had a ton of fish that they just had to throw away. And now with the amount of deep fishing that has been going on, the amount of deep sea fish is near collapse due to the fact that these fish reproduce really slow, so it's harder for these fishes to bounce back once a large amount of them have been captured. But all of that was due to the desire for capitalists to profit.
Things we're doing that are stupid, there's no doubt about that. But one of the things I learned that was so cool, and it filled me with such a sense of optimism, was that the data pretty much clearly show that the fastest way to environmental sustainability is to eradicate absolute poverty. Because as soon as you get people above about $5,000 a year GDP on average, they start to have the luxury of taking a medium to long-term view instead of, scrabbling around in the dirt, literally trying.
Oh, wow. That's pretty obvious. The more wealth a person has, the more sustainable that they can live. When you're very poor, you're not going to care about the environment of the earth or anything like that. You're just focused on surviving and trying to get what you can so you can live to the next day or pay your bills.
To conjure up their next meal, and they start to become concerned with something more like the quality of the environment, a word I hate, the quality of the environment in the broader sense.
Wait, why do you hate the word quality of environment? That would just mean like that would just describe how the quality that the environment you live in is. Is it good or is bad, and the various levels. Like, why would you hate such a term? It's kind of weird.
And so it's pretty damn obvious that if we wanted to save the planet, we could have our cake and eat it too. We could drive energy costs down to as close to zero as we could possibly manage. We could thereby help eradicate absolute poverty around the world. And the consequence of that would be that all those people freed from suffering from the ravages of absolute poverty would start to locally manifest their concern with longer term, let's say, environmental issues.
Yeah, and if you truly care about like helping and suffering of people, you would definitely be for eradicating poverty, and that is actually not that hard to eradicate poverty worldwide. It's just 100, maybe 150 to 200 billion dollars, and the world generates that amount of money quite easily on a daily basis, and the amount of like food and resources that the global economy has, if we were to actually redistribute the resources and wealth, we could quite easily eradicate poverty within a couple weeks.
We could have our cake and eat it too. So why the hell wouldn't we do that? There's a question worth asking yourself for about 20 years. Why instead are we insisting that the proper pathway forward is to impoverish poor people by ramping up energy costs, when there's no evidence whatsoever that that does anything but increase the carbon dioxide load, if you happen to be concerned about that, and drive people who are already struggling directly into absolute poverty?
Well, again, that's like an issue with capitalism. The increase in prices and stuff is due to greedy people wanting to get more money, so they're going to charge more money.
What the hell are we doing? I think the answer to that is we're not that interested in saving the planet. We're interested in destroying the fortunes of those we are envious toward.
Wow, that's hilarious. No, people don't want to care. People don't want to, save the planet and protect, the environment. They're just envious of rich people who gain money by destroying the environment. Wow. Yeah. What a way to just twist shit and make a lie.
And that's partly manifest in this radical anti-capitalism, let's say, despite the fact that capitalist free markets have freed more people from poverty in the last 15 years than have been freed from poverty in the sum total of human history to this date.
Right, because that's why people nowadays are struggling to rent houses when they're required to make 3 times the amount of their income to rent a house than what they can ever gain. Yeah, that's not because of capitalism.
And the data on that are crystal clear. I mean, why the hell do you think people in China aren't starving? Because of the CCP? Or because the utility of free market endeavor was so obvious that even the bloody communists had to figure it out? And so that's quite straightforward and
Right, because nobody under capitalism ever starves.
obvious. And so if you like the poor, then, well, why not help them not be poor? And if you could also make the planet a better place, a greener place, a more biodiverse place, let's say, by simultaneously making the absolutely poor rich, why wouldn't you just line up to do that? And it has to be something like, well, what would you say? A virtually demonic envy and spite.
A virtually demonic envy and spite. Wow, this guy always wants to go to like stuff being demonic when, well, religious people love to demonize things that they hate. But yeah, we could easily, bring these people out of poverty. It would just be a matter of decreasing the profits of the rich, and rich people will easily fight against that and win.
It's something like that. It's appalling. And we're certainly going to see how that plays itself out in Europe this winter. So sorry about that. But really, man, I mean, really.
It's kind of funny how he gets asked like a question about something and then he goes into like a 20-minute long rant about a bunch of different things that like have no true connection to all of this. But it's funny because it's Jordan Peterson and he's just like crazy and funny. Um, he's just a religious right person who thinks he gets to dictate how people live and act and believe while pretending he's not like trying to dictate how people live, act, and believe.
If you're interested in this sort of thing, Bjorn Lomborg has a great book. It's called How to Spend $75 Billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but is a drop in the bucket compared to the sum total of, say, international aid spending. He wrote a great book, took 10 years of research.
Yeah, a few billion dollars is nothing compared to like trillions of dollars that, various nations spend on a yearly basis.
Then he rank ordered interventions on the international front that would alleviate human suffering. He determined where money could be spent most effectively so that the return in relationship to the alleviation of suffering would be maximized, and laid out a whole strategy for multi-dimensional remediation of some of the genuine problems that confront us. It's right there for everyone to read. It's a lot more complicated than, carbon dioxide is bad and the apocalypse is looming. And
I mean, carbon dioxide isn't like technically bad, but high amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is pretty bad because it, increases the global temperatures of the earth, and humans and various plants and animals on the earth can only live within a certain range. So you don't want that range to get too high so that, the earth doesn't, end up getting too hot and killing off humans, which is why, humans are so worried about, global warming and stuff, because humans don't want human society to go away.
neither of those propositions appear, as far as I can tell, to be true. I don't know how many of you know this, but it's really something to know. Do you know that the planet has greened by 15% since the year 2000? So remember that the apocalyptic climate doom claim was that as carbon dioxide levels rose, the plant life in semi-arid areas would die because of the increased heat. So that was one of the claims. And so the planet would rapidly become less green. But actually what happened is that as you raise carbon dioxide levels, it turns out that plants, which live on carbon dioxide, by the way, are able to close their breathing pores because they don't have to, it's easier for them to breathe in carbon dioxide because there's more of it, so they can close their breathing pores. And what that means is that they conserve water better, much better, not just a little bit better, much better. And so what that means is that the Sahara Desert has been shrinking because the semi-arid areas along its fringe.
No, the Sahara isn't shrinking, it's actually increasing. Yeah, global climate change and global warming will, make some places, greener, like up in the Arctic. There are some places that are starting to grow moss and stuff as the ice melts, but various other places like the Sahara Desert and stuff are actually growing because it's getting hotter in those areas, allowing for the desert to increase in size.
Are now capable of supporting plant life, and semi-arid areas all over the world have been turning green. You can go look it up online. There's the data on this are crystal clear. And so how is that not good? The other thing that's happened is because of the increased carbon dioxide production, crop yields have been increasing dramatically. And so we can feed.
I still don't understand how any of this has anything to do with like trans kids and supposedly, society confusing kids on their identities and stuff. But hey, this is Ed Jordan Peterson, and he has to go into some kind of long random spiel about how, like, everything in the world is, like, affecting this one thing.
People more effectively. Now, that's not good, of course, because the planet has too many people on it anyways, which is not the case, by the way.
Yeah, no, the Earth can support, probably a couple trillion more people, but it's also a matter of how we distribute those resources amongst people. If we keep allowing, a small handful of people to control and own all those resources, it's harder for everybody else to make use of said resources as well.
So, and how do I know that? Well, look, let's say you're 50. So when you were 10, there were like 4 billion people on the planet. Now there's 8, which, by the way, is twice as many people. So that's more people. And now you might have...
Wow, really? 8 billion is more than 4 billion? I didn't think it took a degree to figure that out.
ask yourself, well, are people poorer or richer? And the answer is, they're way richer. And so, what do you conclude from that? Well, one conclusion is more people equals more wealth. And why would that be the case? Well, how about more people, especially if they're educated, because now they're rich enough to afford education.
Oh, so now he's in favor of education. Okay, so let's provide every single person with free education. I bet if you were to propose that to Jordan Peterson, he would, find some way to try to claim that it's evil to give everybody education.
Means more cognitive capacity, more brain. And more brain means more innovation. And more innovation means the ability...
Wow. The more educated you are, the better you are at being creative or innovating or even like thinking about, general society and stuff like that, because you have an actual knowledge of the world around you. Wow. I wonder what kind of degree it took Jordan Peterson to figure that out.
ability to do more with less. And so the idea that we're at the carrying capacity of the earth is the delusional and genocidal fantasy of demented Malthusian biologists. There isn't an iota of truth in it.
Right, yeah. It's for the most part, it's just mainly right-wingers that believe in this idea that we've reached the carrying capacity of the world, so we gotta, remove some undesirables. And usually those undesirables are poor brown and black people.
So